Hi guys, I gotta be quiet. Meet Marshall Mather. Drop the S. So why are you messaging people in the comment sections of the real Eminem? Hi, how are you? He says. I said, I'm fine. Where are you located? I said, who is this? I sent you a request on here because I've been getting texts from some of my fans about people claiming to be me. I always see your comments and likes on my Facebook post. God has a reason for all purpose. Have you been getting requests from people claiming to be me? So are you claiming to be someone famous? Because you'll need better English than that to make that claim, dude. To which he responds, nice meeting you, fan. Thanks for supporting my dream and career. May God Almighty continue to bless you. To which I went, thought so. I just created this page so I can talk to my fans. To which I said, just going to throw every bit of your script at me, no matter how ridiculous, huh? Well, have at it. You need the practice. To which my moron said, where are you from? Thanks for being my great fan so far, and may God continue to bless you and protect you. Have you been to any of my concert? To which I said, insert paragraph here. Let's face it, what I write at this point is inconsequential. To which he said, just created this page so I can talk to my fans, so try to understand me. To which I said, you're repeating yourself now, not a good sign. Oh, and I understand you perfectly. I was telling you to try and understand me. Where are you from? I said, I'm trying, but let's face it, your English and those copied bits make no grammatical sense, and I'm from Ankh-Morpork. And unsatisfied with that answer, he says, what's your nationality? I said, Nordic, Slavic, and Terra Australis. What's yours? To which my idiot goes, USA? I said, I doubt that very much, but you do you, little guy. How long have you been my fans? He asks, obviously not reading anything I'm writing. So good to see the superfluous S has been dropped, referring to his name on Marshall Mather. And obviously he didn't understand and sent another question mark. I said, and in response to how long have you been my fans, I said, since I can rotate my arms to create wind resistance, to which he simply put, hun. Which I said, is that a question or a statement? Very profound, well done. A lyrical technician, an electrician, I can see that. Everyone is light work, which is quoting M's own lyrics at him. To which he simply responds, okay, because he's not very bright. I said, I don't gotta play pretend, you see, it's you I'll make believe. Again, quoting Eminem. I don't have the full, he said, and then continues, access to this account. I have my media team. I have enormous respect for you considering the manner in which I have made contact with you. I am very glad you are a fan of mine. May God bless you some more. So to that whole word salad, I wrote, you're just repeating yourself now. My transgender cat Siamese identifies as black but acts Chinese. So you hop tracks like a kangaroo. To which he says, no. I would love to have you a free ticket whenever I'm in your home zone. And it's nice. And now Twittering is working hard to get things done and make my page more secure. And in response to no, I said, didn't think so. And in response to all that, I said, who is Twittering? Maybe ask the birds to stop. Maybe they'll collab and you'll have a shot at a feat. Again, more Eminem quotes. Are you single? He asks. I said, I am currently unencumbered with the problem of singularity. Are you? Which is a very roundabout way of saying, no, I'm not single. But he proceeds to romance me anyway. How long have you been single? And in response to are you, he said, single. I said, I've been single for 11 to 11 moonbeams. To which my genius goes, okay. And in response to his single, I said, contrary to all available evidence. To which he goes, okay. I said, you can send me the free ticket whenever you're in my home zone, as you so inelegantly put it. They were right. You're such a wordsmith. To which he puts a love heart. What's your real name and how old are you? He says. I said, my name is on my account and I'm older than my teeth and the same age as my tongue. How old are you? He asks again, having read. I said, nobody's business but mine. Didn't your mother teach you, like all American men, that it's rude to ask a lady her age? To which he says, no. How long have you been my fan? I said, then shame on your mother. She failed an essential step in your childhood. And in response to how long have you been my fan, I said, you've now asked this thrice. Please do try and keep up. It's very tiresome. To which he says, sorry. Oh, I think it's heaven wish. I talk to you and you know all my life has been on the road. In response to sorry, I said, yes, you are and you will be, like a hacky sack. And in response to that whole heaven sentence, I said, I don't think that at all. To which he says, what do you do for living there? To which I said, I think you're hopelessly out of your depth and flailing here, but you can keep it up if you feel you need the practice. What did you mean? He said. So I said, I sell dehydrated water tablets, apologies, to drought-stricken countries. Just add water and you get water. To which my idiot goes, okay, are you married and blessed with kids? Asked no American celebrity ever. And in response to what did you mean, I said, which time? You've not read anything up until now, so why start now? And in response to, are you married and blessed with kids? I said, again, you've already asked this twice now. To which he again, ever the wordsmith, okay. I said, please do try and pay attention. It gets very tedious. To which he says, can you guess? Okay. What's the craziest thing you've ever done being single? His usual format. I said, climbing up the curtains backwards to see if I can get the cat to create static electricity to light the fireplace. To which this absolute potato goes, oh. I said, did you go to the cipher in your Bud Light shirt with Vex and Bikes and Perks, which is another song lyric? To which he says he's unsent a message, but he actually said the same thing. What's the craziest thing you've ever been done single? So I just sent another laughing emoji. And in response to, did you go to the cipher in your Bud Light shirt with Bikes and Perks? He goes, okay, because he had no idea what I was talking about. I said, running out of nonsense yet? Sorry. I said, yes, you are. To which he put a crying emoji. What do you miss doing being single? How long have you been listening to my music and why do you support my dream? To which I responded, again, you're asking nonsensical questions. Imagine I'm standing right in front of you like a real person. How would you hold an adult conversation, I wonder? Assuming you're an adult, though that seems highly inconsistent with the theme of this chat. To which my muppet puts a crying emoji. Did you live alone or with family? He said, resorting to his script. And he's typing right now, so excuse me for the choppy quality of the video. I said, yes, not going well for you, is it? I said, just taking in a leave for the leave to break the feeve. Again, quoting more Eminem lyrics, which he doesn't understand. And in response to, did you live alone or with family? I said, what do you think? I don't know, came the response. You can tell me. I said, with the information I've given you, you make that determination. And I know you don't know because you lack basic English cognition skills. To which my Eminem says, what do you mean? His English deteriorating even more. I said, exactly that, little man. Do you own a car or a house? He puts in, apropos of nothing. To which I said, thus proving my point from the start. Okay. And in response to, did you own a car or a house? I said, what on earth does that have to do with anything? And does it need to be an either or? But completely unencumbered by any brains, my Marshall said, I just want to know more about you, question mark, question mark, question mark. I said, no, you really don't, because if you did, you would have read what I wrote and made the critical thinking jumps needed in order to ascertain what is required. Instead, you copy all your little scripted questions like an automaton. And in response to question mark, I said, patience, little man, patience. Okay, baby, what did you do for fun? I said, quote song lyrics at Muppets who pretend to be famous online. What do you do for fun? To which he says, I love traveling, listening to music. Tell me about your past relationship. Obviously, he has no conversational skills. I said, that is not anyone's business but mine and my ex's, and a gentleman doesn't ask such silly teenage questions unless he's a teenager, dot, 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 ipso facto, which obviously went right over his head. He said, okay, I'm single, and I want to meet a woman that can accept me as I am and who I... Whatever that means. I said, who you what? You cut the copy-paste in half, little man. To which he said, I said I'm single, and you? And I want to meet a woman that can accept me as I am and who I am. I said, and you've asked 4 times now, and I've answered already. Not my fault your English skills are questionable. And yes, you said, I'm sure you'll prevail if you try hard enough. To which, can you guess, his response was, okay. I want to be in love again all my life. I have been single for long, but now I want to found the right woman that I can spend all my life with as one family. And you know it's really hard to find someone who loves you when you have the power, money, and fame, says my scammer, with none of those. To which I said, I'm sure you'll stumble across someone like that at some point. I'm cheering for you, little guy, truly. Which the Muppet, love-hearted. Yes, he said, I have a lot of shows to attend, and I'm always busy. I won't be able to talk to you much, but I promise you that I will always try my best to talk to you every day. But I thought he said he couldn't talk to me much. Okay, never mind. I said, if you say so, which he love hearts again. Where do you want us to go from here? He asks. I said, I have no idea what you're going on about. None. You've thrown every arsenal in your little script at me and read none of the replies, or at least not comprehended them, so the proverbial ball is in your court, as they say. To which he, running out of anything intelligent to say, not that he ever did, said, I'm a very simple man, but at the same time deep and complicated with my thoughts, easygoing with people that are not picky, open-minded, very honest sometimes, more than it should be. I'm passionate about almost any kind of music. For me, it's like an expression. I'm passionate about dancing, especially salsa. Can you imagine Eminem dancing the salsa? I'm sorry. It just releases your soul, open to changes. You never know what life has for you and what new lessons you are going to learn, what kind of people you are going to meet, and in which way they are going to touch your heart. To which I just wrote insert paragraph here, and he simply put, yes, and he's currently waiting now to see where this is going to go. I'm sorry, I just had the visual of Eminem doing the salsa. So following through with that thought, after he wrote yes, I wrote, the visual image of Eminem doing the salsa while spewing nonsensical format set me off on a tangent of hilarity, hence my late response, though responding to yes is challenging enough. To which he said, check this baby, showing me where he said he's a very simple man. And then, guys, he wrote, I insert paragraphs. He thought when I wrote insert paragraph here that I was asking him to insert paragraphs. In response to check this baby, I said, yes, I know you're a simple man. That is evident throughout this word salad of a chat. To which he just said, okay. Then to his I insert paragraphs, I said, oh my God, I'm truly speechless right now. The lack of self-awareness, the lack of irony. To which he, as you can see now, cut and pasted, are you a Christian? And do you believe in God Almighty? I am smarter and more original than that. I am caring, loving, and God-fearing. If you want a man that knows how to treat a lady and respects him, then read on. I am a hard-working man. Hang on, is he saying he is smarter and more original than believing in God? Okay, let's see. So I simply responded, so you're too smart to believe in God? Okay, that's good to know. And we'll see where he goes, yes. Oh dear God, this guy's stupid. And after his yes, he goes, do you like any gospel musician? In response to yes, I said, you do you, I'm sure. And given what your profession is, most likely better not to, lest you incur his wrath. And in response to, do you like any gospel musician? I said, no, why would I? And you just said you didn't believe in God, so I assume you don't either. Oh, I said I believe in God. So I wrote where I showed him so you're too smart to believe in God. I said, no, you agreed and said yes when I asked this. Ipso facto, you're godless. To which he's now copy-pasted. At first, when I talk to you, I understand why you feel am not real or am fake. I know that we have all manner of people claiming to be who they are not. Listen to every single words. He leaves way too many gaps. To which I just said, ... I said, it's clear how you're having cognitive issues, and the fact that you aren't American is playing havoc with your brain, but do try and be at least mildly believable. We'll see what he says with that. Sorry, the chat's happening live. Oh, there we go. Another copy paste. I select every word, every single words carefully. I was raised never to lie. I got so used to gap being honest, sincere, and truthful that it became a problem for me. Have you ever been lied to? Thanks for the compliments. What compliments? It's not as easy as the world think it is. Die-hard fans like you are the reason why we keep moving. Thanks for the love and support. You deserve a gift. I simply said, what compliments? In response to what compliments, he goes, I like fishing, camping, reading, going to the movies, hanging around with. Big gap. Friends, cracking jokes, listening to music. Didn't he say that already? Dancing and also spending time with someone interesting. I will like to be with the right woman of my dream. Someone I can hold and be with all my life. Do you have any assets? I do have a lot of assets and properties all over, but all I need now is to settle down with the right woman of my dream soon after my tour show. So I wrote, I blatantly called you out several times now, but you're just not comprehending basic English. Then I continued, what tour show? And what was that whole nonsensical format bullshit you just copy-pasted? Poorly, I might add. So we'll see. He's writing now. He's now very triggered. What did you mean by nonsensical format bullshit? Because I have to get ready for work, I just called him out. I said, you're clearly a fake, a bad one at that, with no idea how to have a conversation. I even quoted song lyrics at you, and you didn't get it. You're a fake, and no good at this, Omo. Get a real job. So we'll see what he comes back with. And I just added, everything about this chat has been hilarious. You're ridiculous. And let's see what his response will be. He'll curse me out. Shaking my head, puts in our genius of the day. I'm not fake. To which I wrote, contrary to your pathetically poor English skills, lack of comprehension, and general idiocy. Laughing emoji. Can I trust you for all this conversation? Because it's my privacy and I don't want to lose my dignity. To which I responded, no, absolutely not. I'll 100% post this ridiculous chat all over the internet. Are you mental? Which I think is why he'll probably go and delete everything as soon as he reads that, which is why I had to do this in real time. To which he simply goes, okay. And I said, you are by far the silliest scammer I've chatted with this week. To which he goes, thank you. What a moron. In response to thank you, I wrote, you're very welcome. Make better choices with your life, Omo. Now he pulls out, Alayi. To which I said, no, I'm not a fellow Nigerian scammer, but thanks for confirming what we already knew. Then I added, how are you not embarrassed? Is this your first day? To which he simply puts, no. So I wrote, I'm shocked. You're terrible at this. May I suggest a change in lifestyle? Maybe an honest day's work instead of making a fool of yourself? I do hope he finishes soon. I have to get ready for work. I added, I need to go get ready for work. You know, an honest way to make money. Take this profile down before Facebook do. Help me open a Facebook account, he tries, because obviously he needs someone. To which I wrote, I will never help a scammer to lie and hurt innocent people. Shame on you for even asking. Go away, I'm done playing with you. And then I just added, no remittance for you here, little mugu of mine. I'm going to end it there. If he comes back, I will make a part 2. I really genuinely need to hop in the shower. So like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. I'm sorry for the choppy quality of this video. There you go. Share this with everyone. Tell them, please don't believe it. I've had people sending me stories about family members being scammed, so I think that's awful. It's just an example of another idiot of the week. So there you go. Love you guys. Bye.